If you wake up at 3 a.m. and your mind suddenly starts racing, while your body feels exhausted but your brain refuses to shut off, this experience may have very little to do with traditional insomnia. Sleep science is beginning to uncover a different explanation for this pattern, a pattern that affects thousands of people who simply want to sleep through the night. People who fall asleep normally, yet wake up hours later with a brain that feels wide awake. And what happens in that moment inside the brain is more surprising than most people realize. Because for many individuals, waking up in the middle of the night and being unable to fall asleep again is not random. It can be a sign that the nervous system has temporarily shifted into brain alert mode, a biological state where the brain subtly blocks deep sleep even when the body desperately needs rest. In this state, the brain becomes slightly vigilant, as if it is monitoring the night for something important, which is why the body feels tired, but the mind suddenly becomes active and aware. This is also why so many people say their brain won't shut off at night. And oddly enough, this pattern often appears around the exact same time every night. For many people, that moment happens somewhere between 2:30 and 3:30 a.m., right when sleep should normally be at its deepest and most restorative stage. Instead, the brain suddenly becomes alert, thoughts begin moving faster, and falling back asleep becomes difficult. At first, it feels confusing, sometimes even frustrating, especially when it keeps happening night after night. Most people assume stress, anxiety, or poor sleep habits must be the cause. But sleep science is revealing that the real reason this happens may be very different from what most people believe. And understanding what the brain is actually doing at that moment changes the entire picture. I'm Dr. Sarah, a sleep medicine specialist with a background in psychiatry. For years, I've worked with people who struggle with insomnia after 40. Many of them arrive feeling frustrated, confused, and exhausted from nights that never feel truly restful. They tell me they can fall asleep at first, but something strange keeps happening later in the night. The pattern is so consistent that many of them begin to dread going to bed, because they already expect the same moment to happen again, the moment their sleep suddenly breaks in the middle of the night. They often describe it in almost identical words. I fall asleep normally, but then I wake up at 3 a.m. My brain suddenly switches on for no reason. My thoughts start moving faster and faster, and no matter how tired I feel, I can't fall asleep again. Some people lie there for minutes, others for hours, watching the night slowly pass, all while their body is exhausted, but their mind refuses to quiet down. Eventually, many of them reach the same conclusion. They start believing something must be wrong with their brain. They say things like, "My brain just won't shut off at night," or they assume they've developed a severe form of insomnia. But what's interesting is that most of these individuals are not experiencing classic insomnia at all. Instead, they're caught in a very specific biological pattern that sleep science has only recently begun to understand. And once you see what is happening inside the brain, the entire situation starts to look very different. If you find this topic helpful, take a moment to like this video and follow the channel. We often explore how the brain regulates sleep and why certain nighttime patterns appear. Because many sleep problems are not simply about habits or routines. They are connected to deeper signals inside the nervous system, signals that influence whether the brain allows sleep to continue through the night, signals that can quietly interrupt sleep without people realizing why. And one of those signals becomes especially important around the time many people wake up. This is where things start to become really interesting, because the brain does not randomly wake someone up at the same time every night. When that happens repeatedly, there is usually a biological process behind it, a process connected to the nervous system and the body's internal timing mechanisms. In certain situations, that process can push the brain into a subtle state of nighttime vigilance, a state where the brain becomes slightly alert even when the body is trying to rest. And that state has a name in sleep neuroscience. Understanding that mechanism changes how we look at waking up at 3 a.m. It explains why the mind suddenly becomes active. It explains why someone may feel a racing mind at night. And it explains why falling back asleep can become so difficult in that moment. But before we name that mechanism, there's something important to understand first. Because the brain is not trying to sabotage your sleep. In fact, it believes it's doing something very important. Most people believe the problem is simply falling asleep. They assume if sleep keeps breaking during the night, the body must have lost the ability to rest properly. So they focus on trying harder to relax or forcing themselves to sleep longer. But in many cases, the real issue isn't the beginning of sleep at all. The deeper problem appears later, quietly, while the person is already asleep. Something inside the brain begins to shift during the night, and that shift changes how the nervous system behaves. When this happens, sleep gradually becomes lighter and more fragile. The brain starts monitoring the internal environment more closely. Subtle signals inside the body suddenly feel more important than they should. At the same time, the nervous system begins releasing small pulses of cortisol, not enough to wake the body completely, but enough to keep the brain slightly alert, just enough to interrupt the deeper stages of sleep. This is why someone can feel extremely tired during the day. Their body is craving rest and recovery. Yet when night arrives, something unusual begins to happen inside the brain. Instead of sinking deeper into sleep, the mind becomes more active. Thoughts begin moving faster, the nervous system refuses to fully power down, and suddenly the person experiences a racing mind at night. That moment often appears without warning. A person may have fallen asleep normally just hours earlier. Then they wake up around 3 a.m. feeling strangely aware of their surroundings. Their body still feels tired and heavy in the bed, but their mind feels as if it has been switched back on. Trying to fall asleep becomes surprisingly difficult, even though nothing obvious seems wrong. What makes this experience confusing is that it doesn't feel like classic insomnia. The person did fall asleep in the beginning of the night. Their sleep simply didn't remain stable. Something quietly interrupted the deeper sleep cycle, and once the brain shifts into that alert pattern, returning to deep sleep becomes harder to maintain, even when the body desperately needs rest. At first glance, this pattern might seem random. Many people assume stress must be the only explanation, but the brain rarely behaves randomly during sleep. When the same pattern repeats night after night, there is usually a biological mechanism behind it, a mechanism connected to how the nervous system protects the body during rest. And sleep science has recently given that mechanism a very specific name, a name that explains why the brain sometimes interrupts sleep on purpose. Sleep neuroscience describes this pattern as something called the Neural Sleep Inhibition Response, a biological state where the brain temporarily restricts the depth of sleep, not because the body forgot how to sleep and not because something is broken in the brain, but because the nervous system believes a higher level of awareness may be necessary. So instead of allowing deep sleep to continue normally, the brain becomes slightly cautious. In this state, the brain behaves as if it is standing guard during the night. The nervous system maintains a subtle level of vigilance in the background. The body may still appear to be sleeping, but internally, the brain is paying closer attention to signals around it. This is why sleep can suddenly become lighter and more fragile. And once that shift happens, the deeper stages of sleep become harder to maintain, even when the body desperately needs rest. When the neural sleep inhibition response becomes active, the sleep system becomes unstable. The brain's internal sleep switch no longer holds the same level of stability. Small biological signals can now interrupt the sleep cycle more easily. This creates brief awakenings that the person may or may not remember. Over time, one of those awakenings can become strong enough to fully wake the person, and that moment often appears around the same time during the night, a moment many people recognize immediately. This is why someone might suddenly wake up at 3 a.m. Their body still feels heavy with sleep, but their brain has quietly moved into a more alert mode. Thoughts begin to surface again. The mind starts replaying ideas, memories, or concerns, and suddenly the person experiences what feels like a racing mind at night, even though just minutes earlier they were fully asleep. At that point, trying to fall asleep again can feel surprisingly difficult. The person may close their eyes and try to relax, but their brain continues generating activity. The nervous system remains slightly alert in the background, which makes it harder for deep sleep to return immediately. This is why many people lie awake wondering what just happened, and why they often struggle to sleep through the night. But this leads to a much deeper and more interesting question. If the brain is intentionally limiting deep sleep, there must be a reason. The nervous system rarely activates protective responses without a trigger. Something has to signal the brain that remaining slightly alert might be safer, and in many people, that signal becomes stronger during a certain stage of life, a stage when the biology of sleep begins to change in subtle ways, which is why we need to look closely at what happens inside the brain after the age of 40. Around the age of 40 and beyond, the body naturally begins to experience subtle biological shifts. These changes happen gradually and often go unnoticed at first. Sleep may still begin normally at the start of the night, but the internal systems that regulate deep sleep start becoming more sensitive. Hormonal rhythms begin adjusting in small but meaningful ways, and the brain becomes more responsive to certain nighttime signals that influence whether sleep remains stable through the night. One of the systems most affected during this stage of life is the circadian rhythm. This internal clock helps coordinate when the body releases sleep hormones and when it prepares to wake. After 40, this rhythm can become slightly more fragile. Small disruptions in environment or stress can influence it more easily. Even subtle biological signals during the night may trigger stronger responses from the brain, responses that the body might have ignored earlier in life, and those responses can quietly interrupt deep sleep. Another important factor involves the hormone cortisol. Cortisol naturally follows a rhythm throughout the day and night. During deep sleep, cortisol levels normally remain low and stable, but after the age of 40, the nervous system can become more sensitive to these signals. Even small nighttime fluctuations in cortisol may register more strongly in the brain, which can briefly increase alertness while the body is still trying to sleep, a shift that most people never realize is happening. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It doesn't mean your body has lost the ability to rest. In many cases, the brain is simply becoming more protective of sleep. It begins monitoring the internal environment more carefully during the night, almost like a security system becoming slightly more sensitive with time. The intention is protection, not disruption, but sometimes that protective response becomes a little too active. For some people, this shows up as lighter sleep or more frequent awakenings. Others may notice that they wake up around 3 a.m. almost every night. They open their eyes suddenly and feel strangely alert. Their body still feels tired in the bed, yet their mind feels as if it has been switched back on, and falling asleep again becomes more difficult than expected, which makes it hard to truly sleep through the night. When the neural sleep inhibition response activates during this stage of life, the brain can remain in brain alert mode longer than it should. The nervous system keeps scanning the internal environment instead of fully relaxing. Deep sleep becomes harder to maintain once the brain shifts into this pattern. But something even more interesting begins to happen in this state, because the brain doesn't just stay slightly alert, it also starts producing a very specific mental experience, the exact experience many people describe as a racing mind at night.
When the brain shifts into brain alert mode during the night, something subtle begins to change. The nervous system starts monitoring the body more closely. Internal signals that would normally remain quiet during sleep become easier for the brain to notice. Instead of drifting deeper into restorative sleep, awareness slowly increases. The body may still feel relaxed and heavy in the bed, but inside the brain, activity begins to rise again, and that quiet shift is often the moment sleep becomes fragile. In this state, the brain begins scanning the internal environment. It checks breathing patterns, body sensations, and emotional signals. This monitoring process is automatic and usually happens outside conscious awareness. But the side effect of that monitoring is increased mental activity. Thoughts start appearing more clearly in the mind. Ideas that would normally stay quiet during sleep suddenly feel louder, and the mind begins to generate movement again. Small concerns that felt insignificant during the day may suddenly feel more important. The brain might revisit conversations, plans, or unfinished tasks. Even neutral thoughts can begin looping through the mind. This doesn't happen because the person is intentionally thinking about them. It happens because the brain is no longer fully in deep sleep mode. Instead, it is shifted into a state of partial alertness, a state where mental activity becomes easier to trigger. This is why so many people wake up and say the same thing: "My brain just won't shut off." They try to relax, slow their breathing, or close their eyes again, but their thoughts continue moving in the background. The harder they try to stop thinking, the more noticeable those thoughts become, which makes it feel like the mind is working against them, even though the brain is simply reacting to a biological signal. What most people don't realize is that this mental activity is actually a side effect. The mind is not the cause of the awakening. It is the result of the nervous system staying slightly alert. When the brain maintains this alert state, deep sleep cannot fully return. And that is exactly what happens when the neural sleep inhibition response becomes active. The brain remains cautious instead of fully relaxing again, which makes falling back asleep much harder in that moment. Because once this response is active, the brain resists dropping back into deep sleep. The sleep switch struggles to stabilize again. Even though the body feels exhausted, the nervous system remains partially vigilant. That is why someone may lie awake after 3 a.m. wondering why sleep disappeared. It can feel confusing and frustrating when it repeats night after night. Many people begin believing their sleep system is damaged, but the real explanation is usually far more straightforward. Waking up in the middle of the night does not mean your brain is broken, and it doesn't mean you have permanently lost the ability to sleep well. In many cases, the brain is actually doing the opposite of failing. It is trying to protect the body during the night. The nervous system is designed to monitor safety even while we sleep. Sometimes that protective system simply becomes a little too sensitive, and when that happens, sleep can become lighter and easier to interrupt. In this situation, the brain believes it is helping you. It increases awareness slightly so it can detect anything unusual. This response evolved to keep humans safe while resting. Thousands of years ago, that alertness could protect someone from real danger, but in modern life, the same protective response can activate even when nothing is wrong. The brain simply interprets certain internal signals as reasons to stay cautious, and that caution can quietly interrupt deep sleep.
Once the nervous system learns this pattern, it can begin repeating it automatically. The brain recognizes the same nighttime signals and responds the same way. Over time, that response becomes familiar to the nervous system, so the brain may activate that alert pattern at nearly the same time each night, often around the early morning hours when sleep cycles are shifting, which is why many people consistently wake up at 3 a.m. even when their evenings feel calm and relaxed. When this pattern forms, people often notice the same experience returning. They open their eyes suddenly during the night, their body still feels tired and ready to sleep, but their mind feels awake and active again. thoughts begin moving faster through the mind, and that familiar racing mind at night begins to appear, making it difficult to fully sleep through the night. The encouraging news is that this pattern is not permanent. The brain is incredibly adaptable throughout life. Just as it can learn a protective sleep pattern, it can also learn to release it. The nervous system constantly adjusts based on the signals it receives. When those signals begin to change, the brain gradually relaxes its nighttime vigilance. Deep sleep becomes easier to maintain again, and the sleep cycle starts stabilizing. This process begins with something sleep scientists often describe as the sleep switch. The sleep switch helps the brain transition between wakefulness and deep sleep. When it functions smoothly, the brain stays asleep for longer, more restorative periods. But when alert signals interfere with that switch, sleep becomes unstable. Stabilizing that system allows the brain to release its protective alert state, which is the key step in moving out of the neural sleep inhibition response. And understanding how that shift happens leads us directly to the next piece of the puzzle. When the sleep switch begins to stabilize again, the entire nighttime rhythm starts shifting. The brain no longer feels the same need to remain partially alert. Signals inside the nervous system become calmer and more predictable. Instead of scanning the internal environment, the brain allows sleep to deepen naturally. This shift does not happen through force or pressure. It happens because the brain gradually recognizes that the night is safe again, and once that recognition appears, the sleep system begins to relax. As that stability returns, the nervous system starts slowing down its alert signals. The background vigilance that once interrupted sleep becomes weaker. The brain stops reacting so strongly to small internal changes. Breathing, heart rhythm, and hormonal signals begin to synchronize more smoothly. The body can remain in deeper stages of sleep for longer periods, and the night begins to feel quieter inside the brain, a quiet that many people have not experienced in years. One of the first changes people often notice involves cortisol activity during the night. Those small pulses that once pushed the brain into alertness become less intense. The nervous system stops amplifying those signals so strongly. Instead of triggering wakefulness, the body allows those rhythms to pass quietly. This helps the brain remain in deeper sleep cycles for longer stretches, which is essential for physical restoration and mental recovery, and it plays a major role in helping someone sleep through the night again. As this process continues, deep sleep becomes easier to maintain. The brain no longer jumps quickly into alert mode at the slightest signal. Sleep cycles begin connecting more smoothly from one phase to the next. Instead of waking up at 3 a.m., many people remain asleep through that transition. Their mind stays quiet, and the body continues restoring itself. Morning begins to feel different as well, because the brain finally receives the deep rest it was missing. This is how the neural sleep inhibition response gradually fades over time, not because sleep is being forced or chemically suppressed, but because the brain is no longer receiving signals that trigger nighttime vigilance. The nervous system slowly releases the alert pattern it once believed was necessary, and once that pattern weakens, sleep becomes more natural again. The body does what it was designed to do, allowing the night to unfold without interruption. This is why certain forms of nighttime support can make a meaningful difference. When they help calm the nervous system before sleep begins, the brain receives signals that encourage deeper relaxation. Those signals influence the stability of the sleep switch during the night, and over time they help reduce the conditions that trigger brain alert mode. But there is one more piece of this process that many people overlook, a piece that explains why some approaches work better than others. Some sleep specialists now recommend gentle forms of nighttime support that help the nervous system remain stable during sleep. The goal is not to overpower the brain or force sedation. Instead, the focus is on supporting the biological systems that regulate the sleep cycle. When those systems receive the right signals, the brain can maintain deeper sleep more easily. This approach respects the natural rhythms that control when the body rests and recovers.
And for many people, that kind of support becomes an important part of restoring stable sleep, especially for those who struggle to sleep through the night. One example often recommended by sleep professionals is a doctor-approved natural sleep support. This type of support is designed to work alongside the body's existing sleep biology. Rather than shutting the brain down artificially, it encourages balance in the nervous system. That balance helps stabilize the signals that influence the sleep switch. When those signals become more steady, the brain is less likely to enter brain alert mode, and the sleep cycle can continue without sudden interruptions, which is exactly what many people are hoping to restore. Many individuals combine this kind of nighttime support with healthy sleep habits. Simple changes in routine, environment, and evening stimulation can strengthen the process. Together, these adjustments help the brain gradually learn that nighttime is safe again. The nervous system becomes less reactive to small signals during sleep. Over time, the brain spends less time in the neural sleep inhibition response, and deeper sleep becomes easier to maintain again, allowing the body to finally recover through the night. If you're curious to learn more about this kind of support, you can find additional information in the first pinned comment below this video. There you'll see how some sleep specialists recommend integrating it into a nightly routine. The goal is not to replace healthy sleep habits, it's to complement them in a way that supports the brain's natural rhythms. Because when the nervous system receives the right signals before sleep, the entire night can begin to unfold differently. But there is another important factor behind why so many people wake up at 3 a.m. The brain rarely wakes someone at the exact same time by accident. In fact, there is a very specific biological rhythm involved, a rhythm connected to the timing of cortisol activity deep within the brain. This subtle shift tends to occur during a narrow window of the night, often between 3 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. for many individuals, and understanding that rhythm explains a lot about why sleep suddenly breaks. In the next video, I'll explain exactly why the brain enters brain alert mode during that window. We'll look at how the cortisol rhythm interacts with the sleep cycle and how that interaction connects directly to the neural sleep inhibition response. Once you see how those signals work together, the 3 a.m. awakening pattern becomes much clearer. You may even begin to predict why it happens in the first place. So if you've been wondering how to finally sleep all night, the explanation in that next video may connect a lot of important dots.